drive, even though my flash drive is falling apart. Good evening. I think we'll get started. I've been told we are on the air for people on the outside. Thank you very much for coming to this meeting. This is regarding a potential herbicide treatment in Secaucus Lake, but it's also a discussion of the entire project, not just herbicide treatment on Secaucus. My name is John McPhedran. I work for the Maine Department of Environmental Protection. This is a state agency, not the federal U.S. EPA. Again, the Department of Environmental Protection. I'm based in Augusta. There are 4 of us working on the program out of Augusta. And we're all generally based in Augusta, but we travel statewide, including down east and to Aroostook County as part of our work. And I'm really grateful for you all to come out tonight so we can discuss Secaucus. Mr. Ward, we were reminiscing about a couple decades ago on Pickerel Pond, where we spent a lot of time. The plant on Pickerel Pond is hydrilla, which is a different plant than what we have here in Secaucus. And all of this work that we do depends a lot on you. I know I have heard it many times, these are waters of the state should take care of these waters. It would be great if we had somebody on every water and we're able to do that, but taking care of the waters requires a collaborative effort between the state and lake associations and volunteers. We have a Secaucus volunteer here who's been very, very helpful with working with Lori Callahan on the lake, doing survey work, and then Dale and Debbie are here from Lake Arrowhead, who've done a great deal of work there, including Debbie finding the first documentation of this particular plant in the state. So, with all that, I will get started unless anybody has any. Okay, and I would just assume if you have questions, raise your hand along the way, and we can have a conversation as we go. First of all, I just wanted to talk about what I'm going to talk to you about, invasive aquatic plants in general and their impacts. The statewide context, where are the invasive aquatic plants? Where we found it in Secaucus thus far, the importance of spread prevention, detection, and plant removal. So detection is finding it early in the plant's growth, which is really critical if you're going to have any success in managing it meaningfully. Spread prevention is preventing it from spread within a lake, but also to other water bodies. And then plant removal is typically the type of work that we do, and I'm talking about manual removal. Most of the removal that's going on in the state of Maine is manual removal. That is with divers. It is with suction dredges that the divers direct the plants into, and also sometimes smothering the plants with barriers. Yes?
When was this found?
When was it found? It was found in Secaucus in 2023 or two? Two or three? Two? Okay. 3, 2? 3 years ago. Found in Secaucus. A very small infestation of it. I'll talk about the objective of the herbicide treatment, what herbicide we are proposing, and then describe the next steps and why I'm here. I'm here because our department needs to get a permit to apply this product. We have what's called a general permit. A general permit lays out the basic standards of what we need to do. But then we apply for a specific permit, which is called a notice of intent. That's the lingo. And we are in the process of applying for a notice of intent. This notice of intent requires that we hold a public meeting, requires that we do a number of different things that I can talk about during this presentation. But this is a required public meeting for getting this notice of intent. And even if it weren't a required public meeting, we would want to do a public meeting because this is a big deal. And it's important to try to get the word out about what we're proposing to do. This is from Lake Arrowhead in probably 2002, I think. Invasive aquatic plants can outcompete native plants. They tend to grow and spread rapidly. That was 1 year in Arrowhead when it would bloom particularly. This is variable leaf water milfoil, not the plant we're talking about in Secocas, and it has emergent spikes that, in this case, they appeared to be wall to wall. They weren't, but there was very, very dense variable milfoil in Lake Arrowhead. It can interfere with swimming and boating and fishing. Can have impacts on water quality, especially if you have a die-off of a lot of plant vegetation at one time. That could have impacts on oxygen availability to organisms. Eradication is seldom possible. I'll talk a little bit about eradication, but it's seldom possible. And we do know, actually specifically from Lake Arrowhead, when property values were adjusted based on the degree of the infestation. I already touched on spread prevention and detection and removal, but I want to emphasize this is really important. This is the type of thing that all of you can get involved with on Secocas Lake. There's a lot to prevent. While we're here talking about a potential problem, there's a lot to prevent going in and coming out of every lake in the state. There were over 91,000 courtesy boat inspections in Maine last year. The bass groups are required in their permit to also inspect all boats going in and out. So there were around 6,000 bass inspections last year. In Secocas, we had 629 inspections in 2024. Interestingly, it was down quite a bit from 2025, and I'm not sure if that was all weather related or what that was. I'm not sure. 4 plants were found. None was invasive. There were almost 500 paid inspection hours on Secocas, 2 volunteer hours. Early detection is critical, and especially, for any invasive aquatic plant. I mentioned briefly manual removal. This is long-term management that is being done in a number of water bodies in the state. When the plants really are, it's not a question of whether you can eradicate something, it's how you are going to manage it. This map shows known infestations as of 2025, January 2025, and you can see that most of the infestations, well, by and large, they're all in the southwest corner of the state. There is way in the east part of the state, in Big Lake, down East Maine. There is a dense infestation of variable milfoil there. Number 34 on this map is Secocas Lake. As you can see, there's a lot of activity in terms of invasive plants in this part of the state. Brittle naiad, yes. 2022 was confirmed by Lori Callahan. Lori Callahan has been working in this part of the state for probably 15 or 20 years, and it's been a great resource in working with volunteers. The plants were removed, plants found were removed. Follow-up survey, several follow-up surveys occurred, and we also had some diver tow surveys by our department where we have 1 or 2 divers on a line in scuba gear, and you're surveying deeper waters where it's difficult to see from above. We have been concerned, and I know Diane and others on the lake have been concerned about the high spread potential within the lake and to other water bodies. Brittle naiad has a distinctive characteristic in that it has see how the leaf, it curves back. It's called a recurved leaf, where sometimes plants have a recurved leaf and the point of the plant curves all the way back to the stem. And then it also has some prominent teeth on the leaves. The problem is, as Diane and Debbie and Dale can vouch for, the problem is that these leaves and that recurred nature doesn't start right from the get-go. It happens over time. In other words, you need to have, you can confuse this naiad with two other naiads easily in the early growth of this plant. And then when you see it and it has this characteristic, you know this is brittle naiad. I bring it up because of the timing. If we are to do an herbicide treatment, timing is critical. We need to do the survey work in time to do the treatment, and we need to have plants growing in order for this to be effective. If there are no plants growing there, it's not going to kill the brittle naiad. It's not like it's, well, there are, it does create seeds, and that's another challenge with this plant, because there can be a seed bank for many years. These photos are from Northeast Pond on the Maine-New Hampshire border of brittle naiad. That's in the left, that's probably the top foot of about 4 feet of plant that I was swimming in. And then that photo on the right, it's not some rhinoceros or beaver or something, but the edge, this edge is an edge of a hedgerow, really, of brittle naiad. So it can become very dense and grow to the top of the water column in 6 or 8 feet of water easily. Here's some information about brittle naiad, intentionally introduced for waterfowl food. It is an annual plant. It dies back annually. The brittle nature of it is in the fall or late summer and early into the fall, it fragments, and the image gives a little bit of a feel for it, but the fragments can be even much smaller than that. And the fragments have a stem, or maybe a couple of stems, and some leaves, and then it has the seeds, which are in the seed, in the leaves, and those seeds can float here, there, everywhere, and then create a new plant population. Spreads by fragmentation, seeds, and waterfowl can spread this. For a lot of plants, I think waterfowl is a relatively small factor because waterfowl is likely to be able to get, they clean themselves and get things off of them. But we know from a student who spent the summer working with us that these seeds can be consumed by waterfowl and then pass through the waterfowl's gut and then be viable to grow, because she had some clipped wings, clipped waterfowl, and she was able to feed them. We provided the seeds for her, and she put them in food, and she fed them to these waterfowl, and then took the excrement and got the seeds out of it, and successfully grew seeds from those. And it can be very dense, as I've already said and shown you a little bit. So let's go to Secocas in particular. You all know this lake much better than I. This shows virtually the entire water body, and the two red areas are the areas where we have found, I say we, I'm using the proverbial we because it's mostly other people in this room and Lori Callahan, where the plant has been found. And this is another photo of, I'll go back to this. So the next photo is a blow up of that area in the southeast portion of the lake. So those are the two areas thus far where it's been found. Again, in 2020, 2022, and my understanding is that any plant that was found had been pulled.
We did in 2022.
Yeah.
Last year we removed some, we did. Right.
From this little spot here. Yep. Okay. We hope that the plant is confined to these isolated areas. Time will tell. We are considering, as you know very well, because I've mentioned it several times, and it's why we're here, a potential herbicide treatment this summer. It would likely be in the last, mid to late, probably in the last bit of July, most likely. It depends on the growth of the plant, and it also depends on our contractor's availability. We do have a date for it. I don't remember what the exact date is right now, but when we start moving things around, then it gets complicated or difficult. We have a contractor who is very accommodating, and we're fortunate for that. We hire somebody from a company called not CPRO. Solitude Lake Management is the name of the company. Solitude Lake Management. They were based in Massachusetts, and actually the group that we deal with is based in Massachusetts, but now it's a nationwide company that does not just aquatic plant work.
Did they do Pickerel Pond?
They did Pickerel Pond with, again, a different plant and a different herbicide, but yes, they did pickerel. We've been really fortunate to have conscientious people applying herbicide for us. It's not, compared to, especially in New Hampshire, I'm not dissing New Hampshire, but we have a different approach to herbicide use. And the approach in Maine is that in statute it reads that the DEP, the agency I work for, or an agent of the DEP may apply herbicides, but only DEP and agent of an agent of DEP. And advice from our Attorney General some years ago said, really, if it says DEP or an agent, it's really just DEP. We can ask and agree to a lake association, for example, doing some plant survey work for us. But in terms of contracting for the treatment or contracting for any of that, it's got to be a contract that we have with the entity. So we have a contract with this company that we've had for several years and renewed it several times. We have to go out to bid, do an RFP sometimes to make sure there's no other company that is available to do the work we need to do. Long answer to your question, but we do have a contractor. This quote is the goal of an herbicide treatment is supposed to be restoring biological communities. What does that mean? We're not going to get into that tonight, but that's the gist. Our priority for use of herbicides in the group that I work with, the Invasive Aquatic Species Program, is rapid response to new infestations. When there's a new infestation and it's brand new and it's relatively small, that's when we have the best opportunity to try to eradicate it. A few past results for the program. You have some Pickerel Pond graduates here. We treated Pickerel Pond 9 or 10 years in a row because it was the only pond in the state that had hydrilla. And in talking to our colleagues across the Midwest and to California, it felt like this was a really good idea to get at that plant. We use a term called functional eradication. Even Pickerel Pond at 50 acres, you can't swim every part of Pickerel Pond. But we know from surveys that are still being done by Lori and maybe some of you, I don't know, that it's not being seen. So we say it's functionally eradicated, again, because we can't survey every nook of it. Pickerel Pond in Limerick, Salmon Lake in Belgrade, that was Eurasian water milfoil, discovered in 2008. In the fall, we pulled plants we could find. It was in a 7-acre cove. The next spring, we pulled plants we could find. Meanwhile, we applied for a permit. We treated it with a product called 2,4-D, which some of you may have heard about before, in the fall, and it never came back. Amazing, really. Amazing, I say, because, again, talking with colleagues across the country, they rarely have even one documentation of an eradication. Damascotta Lake Jefferson, that was also hydrilla, and that was with, I think it was with sonar that we used that product for Damascotta. It was in two places in Damascotta. It was discovered by a weed watcher, an invasive plant patroller, as we call them. It was discovered by an invasive plant patroller. We managed it with bottom barriers. We put down blankets on the bottom. We brought in stone to prevent exchange of water between the cove and the outer part of the lake. We took up the bottom barrier because it wasn't working. We put down another bottom barrier. We applied herbicide. So it's an integrated process. And somehow it's no longer in Damascotta Lake 2 locations. Here's some other locations. Northeast Pond in Lebanon, where we're dealing with this plant, brittle naiad, and it's a very difficult process. Northeast Cobbossee Lake in Winthrop, we're working on Eurasian water milfoil there. They also have variable water milfoil, and they have European frogsbit, which are other aquatic invasive plants. And Abescook Lake in Monmouth, and Winthrop is a lake where we've used herbicides once, and we're using them again to try to manage variable water milfoil. Great Pond, Great Meadow Street in Rome. Lake Arrowhead, Dale and Debbie are very familiar with that. That's an ongoing project. And there are 2 private ponds in Scarborough that have Eurasian water milfoil that we are not managing. We attempted to manage them.
Private pond, somebody owns it.
I'll go ahead with your question.
The private pond thing, somebody owns it,
There's no public access to the pond, and it is under 30 acres, so it's not a great pond in state law. It has a classification. I think it's a Class C water body, but it's not a great pond. I think one landowner owns the perimeter, and there are other houses set back from it. There are 2 of those ponds, and we tried to manage one, and it wasn't successful. And we decided, because of its location and the low risk of spread, that it did not warrant a lot of time spent on it. And apparently, somebody felt differently, because I've been told, and I went down there, that somebody took it into their own hands and spread herbicide.
Imagine that.
Our priority, as I said again, for use of herbicides is rapid response to new infestations where we might be able to eradicate. That is the primary objective of this treatment. We're hopeful that we'll be able to do that. It's still a tall order, even for those 2 areas, but we are hopeful. Lots of seeds are created. If we can't eradicate, we would switch to ongoing surveying and manual removal. Clearly, as I mentioned earlier, we need to continue to inspect boats going in and out, because it's not just about brittle naiad. And it's also not just about Secocus, it's about not taking it to other water bodies.
Well, we've been lucky because the milfoil.
Sir, just a moment there.
The milfoil from Arrowhead. We've been lucky that they inspect the boats, and we haven't got the milfoil over here, which is very surprising. They do a damn good job at the launch.
Thank you. This is typically what it's an airboat typically that does the applications, or in the case of some smaller areas, it might just be a small runabout with a backpack sprayer. And thinking hopefully that's what we're dealing with in Secaucus. It may be that this is a backpack spray operation. I'm not sure we leave that up to the contractor. The herbicide that we're proposing to use, oh yes, question back there.
I understand the plan is to use a hose of some sort underwater to spread this. Is there a chance of that herbicide being distributed above the water?
Yes, you're right. I did, in the letter, it said that it would likely be distributed by a perforated hose under the water, and that's typically what they do. If there is an isolated spot that is very small, they may use a backpack. So I should have clarified that in that letter. But in the case of a backpack sprayer, it would be applied on the surface of the water and then drop down through the water.
And what's the vulnerability of plants that may be along the shoreline?
The plants that are most likely to be impacted by this are submerged plants, especially because where the infestation would be, and it mixes relatively quickly with the lake water. We're going to talk about the restrictions on uses and whatnot for this water body. For this chemical. And I have information with me. I have scores of information about impacts on various plants. So there are other plants that will be impacted, but plants right along the shore, I think, are not likely to be impacted. It'll be more the plants that are offshore where this plant is found.
And in those areas which you have marked as the places that are going to be treated, are those areas, are those people that are abutting that area, are we going to be told when the application will be done? Yes, you will. People who are abutting the area plus to about 1,000 feet from the area of treatment will be informed of when that treatment will be done. We will write a letter, and we will also work with the Lake Association, so there's redundant information coming out. So yes, you will be notified of that and of the restrictions that are on the label for this herbicide, which I will get to in just a moment.
It says don't drink the lake water for 3 days after treatment. Does that include wells, or what is it?
No, that is we never recommend. There may be people who are drinking lake water. I recognize that. We do not recommend people doing that for other reasons than for many reasons. But recognizing that there may still be people. I mean, I know people in other parts of the state that are drinking water out of the lake, and that is for people who have line coming from the lake, and they use that line for drinking water.
Could I just add something about the plants that are near the area?
Yes, please.
Is that on? We had herbicide applied to our cove in Lake Arrowhead, and what I observed was some of the plants at the edges looked a little bit yellowed, as if they'd had too much sun, basically. None of them died, and they all came back the following year. So I didn't see any die-off at all in our cove.
Back to the herbicide, which is called Aquastrike. It is a combination of two herbicides. And the reason that we have chosen this is in large part based on our experience in Northeast Pond, where we've treated for quite a number of years. Let's see, that started, I think, in 2016. We've treated there not every year since there, but maybe 6 or 7 years. And we weren't getting great results. I think it was a combination of the timing of our treatment and the fact that we did get what Aquatic gives, which is a quick kill of vegetation, but we had a lot of regrowth the following year. And the second product in this is endothol, which appears to maybe have some systemic impacts. By that I mean instead of just killing the plant and you see a dead plant, but the roots may remain there, the systemic is that it might be killing the roots also, and in that respect preventing an existing plant from regrowing the next year. So, and we have seen in Northeast Pond on the Maine-New Hampshire border, we have seen better results. It's granted only a couple of years, but we have seen better results with this combination. So any product that we use, we have 6 products in our general permit, 6 chemicals. Each of those has to be registered, and I say registered and not approved, because the United States Environmental Protection Agency, they register herbicides, and there's a process they follow to look at impacts of herbicides on humans, on plants, on fish, on birds, on mammals, on invertebrates in the water. There are studies that are done in the process of getting a product registered for use. And there are safeguards built into that, which end up with the label that says, well, I'll get to what this label says. The label says there's a 600-foot setback from potable water intakes. And that potable water intake, what they're talking about is a public water supply, a public water system. When we get our permit, or prior to getting our permit, we need to consult with the drinking water program at the Maine CDC and say, we're considering herbicide treatment on this lake. Is it a drinking water supply? For example, Cavasaconte Lake in Winthrop and Monmouth has 2 summer camps. Those are public water supplies. In that case, we have to get in the written consent each year that we are going to treat of those water suppliers. There is a 1 to 3 day restriction for drinking water, depending on the rate applied, and what we're putting on the most restrictive drinking waiting period. In other words, if you apply the lower rates, it's a day. If you apply at higher rates, it's 3 days that you have to wait if you are drinking it. But we will put on the most conservative. So our warning that will come out with the letter will say 3 day restriction for drinking the water.
What about pets?
I'll check on pets.
I have a chocolate lab that loves to be in the water.
Yep.
He hasn't learned how to close his mouth yet.
Well, there may be something specific to pets also. The question to the people on the TV was, what about pets? And I will maybe even before I go, I can see what I find in my paperwork about that. And restriction on livestock consumption for 1 day, turf and landscape ornamentals 1 to 3 days, irrigation to food crops 5 days, And there is no swimming restriction from the company that produces this. But we always advise when we're doing treatments that residents do not swim within the treated area. For what if there's some accident or the spillage, which is very unlikely, or just that there's a literal accident, an actual accident. So we ask that people refrain from swimming and refrain from boating in the area on the day of treatment as an added measure. I think I've covered most of what we need to do. I just wanted to give you it's not like we go in and say, hey, can I get this permit? There's a lot of we have to submit a statement of significant need. I mean, we should have to do this. It's a serious undertaking, and we take it very seriously. And it's not over when the herbicide goes in, because then we need to monitor the water until we do not detect the chemical in the water. There are some chemicals bind with organic matter, and that's the main way that the chemical is reduced. Some, on a hot day, the sunlight degrades the chemical, so there are different ways that they are processed in the environment. We need to monitor until it's not found anymore. So we select, if it's just the two areas in Secaucus, we hope, we would probably monitor in each location. And we take it to a lab in Lewiston. And
Is that the only two places it was found?
the question is that the only two places that it's been found? And to this point, yes, that is the only two places it's been found. So we will monitor for the presence of the chemical, and we also need to do, and this is something that Diane and others have been doing the pre-work for. They've been doing, and Debbie and Dale and Lori Callahan, to determine where these plants are found now, but we also need to find out afterwards, are they gone? They're probably not going to be gone in 1 year. It's probably going to be a multi-year process. Have they shown up in other areas? And it'll require additional conscientious surveying. And in fact, Diane could probably use some help. She's getting great help, but what?
Yes, I could.
Diane could use some help, some more help, in addition to what Dale and Debbie are providing. The next steps, I need to do a little bit more on the notice of intent based on the meeting and any other comments that I get, and then I will submit it to another part of our agency. The part of DEP where I work is called the the Division of Environmental Assessment. We have people doing just that. A lot of assessment of what's going on in the environment, in rivers, in streams, in wetlands, in lakes. And then there is the Division of Water Quality Management, where the head of that is Laura Crossley. And we need to get our notice of intent from Laura. If we have submitted everything and it's all in order, then it's likely we will get our notice of intent from Laura, and I will submit that probably Thursday or Friday. Pre-treatment plant survey needs to happen. This still needs to happen. It's going to happen. I think we have a meeting on it tomorrow. There have already been I think we've had maybe 2 or 3 meetings already on this. So it's something that requires a lot of planning, and the Lake Stewards of Maine, which is based in Lewiston, or in Auburn, they are helping to organize this. Treatment date is likely mid to late July. If for some reason we don't find any plants, we're not going to treat. That would be great.
What do you mean? I thought you already found it.
Not this year. We haven't surveyed this year. So the question was, what are you talking about? Because you've already found the plants. We need to go to those areas where the plants were found last year and look and see that they're still there. And they probably are. But
They're not just going to disappear, right?
probably not. I'm just trying to...
Well, I know.
No, but we need to have an additional plant survey prior to treatment to confirm that they're there and to assess whether they have spread dramatically from that area to other areas of the lake. And that will also involve the dive surveys, as I mentioned, but also we'll need help from others on the lake, others on the pond here who are interested, and it would be very helpful.
Johnny, if I could just add, the nature of this particular plant is because it dies off each year, you don't know where it's going to come up next year because the seeds float away with fragments when it falls apart in the fall. So even though we know the two areas where it's been found in previous years, we can't just limit our search to those patches because it might have blown across the lake. Yeah, it's pretty much difficult, and the window when we can go and survey and find this plant is very narrow. So we've got to have all eyes on that water as soon as it's visible, and then we'll know where to herbicide this year. And we have to do that each year, and can't expect it to be the same each year.
It's a crapshoot. Thank you, Dale. It's a crapshoot if you think that we need to survey this whole lake. It certainly is, because there's no way we can survey the whole lake. But with people who are experienced in this plant and finding the plant, we'll do as good a job as we can and as any crew can do, and hopefully it's not spread to the point where it's out of control. And seriously, though, if there are other people who might be interested in helping with this, it would be welcome with the survey part of it. I mentioned the treatment time and the herbicide concentration monitoring. We do, whenever we're on the water, and we would ask any surveyors when they're on the water to look for any impacts that are beyond what would be expected. I mean, we have to do that as part of what we do. Just, do we see a bunch of fish that have died? And who knows, I mean, it could be for any number of reasons. I just got an email from Fish and Wildlife that there were 2 fish kills that were reported that have nothing to do with any herbicide treatment or anything. It's a fish disease that they have. But we still want to hear about anything that you might see on the water. When people have done illegal applications of herbicides, it's pretty obvious, and we hear about them. And post-treatment surveys for brittle naiad. What other questions do you have or comments?
I'd just like to add that in Lake Arrowhead, we had this plant. We tried manually pulling it out. We spent months snorkeling, wetsuits, pulling the stuff out. It became too much, and this application of this herbicide had a fantastic result. Since we herbicided there, the next year we didn't find it in that area of the lake where it was treated. No, this is for the brittle naiad. We've got other invasives in Lake Arrowhead as well, and they've also been treating the milfoil now with some of the different herbicide. The results of that have been excellent as well. But getting rid of the naiad, I believe herbiciding is the only way you can do it. So I'm really pleased to hear that we're going to try that here for purpose as well.
And who pays for this?
The department where I work is paying for it. The funds are from the Lake and River Protection sticker. Any watercraft, any motorized watercraft needs to have the sticker to launch on the freshwater in Maine. Well, it's combined with it, but it's a totally separate fee, which has been really good for us because, well, it's dedicated, and it's been going on since 2002. That was the first year, and 70% of the funding comes to the Department of Environmental Protection. 30% goes to the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. They have one full-time person working on aquatic invasive animals, and which is great because they needed that. But many other states evidently combined their funding mechanism with literally with the Coast Guard registration, or with so it was, and the Coast Guard said to them, "You can't do it that way." And from the get-go, evidently the way that it was done in Maine worked just right, and it was just what we needed, because I have asked our warden service, I'm told by other states they can't do this sticker situation. Our warden service has said, we're fine. We get audited, and we're all good. And it's just the way that the funding mechanism is implemented, and that amount of, so we will pay for, we don't pay for our wonderful volunteers, but we are paying for this project as a rapid response to a new infestation.
Which means if we don't find them all and they don't herbicide it this year, we might run out of time. So get out there and find all the places where it is.
Find all the, yeah.
So they can nail it.
Any other comments or questions? That I can see what I have in my bag there for pets. Thank you for coming and for your interest, and please spread the word to your neighbors. And if you didn't sign your name, I would appreciate you do, so that I can put it on the. I need to have a list of people who attended the public meeting. Thank you.